I suppose in the past, I don't know, 100 years or so, perhaps a bit less, there's been a preoccupation among especially non-religious people that nonetheless had a feeling for spiritual things, but without anchoring them to a personal God. Not sure how much something like Krishnamurti might be classified in this sort of area. Certainly some theosophists who it's more philosophy than theology. So one might have in this sort of school a preoccupation with, for instance, non-attachment, and possibly considerable consideration of what we mean by attachment and other specific words. There's a sort of economic hope in a way that simply broad principles like non-attachment, if achieved, would bring the sort of perfect spiritual state, and that to realize such is itself enlightenment. If definition of enlightenment is definition of non-attachment is taken as a non-emotive understanding of the word, well, we're not physically attached to particular desires, though desires clearly could have quite an extreme quasi-attachment that we might want to define as addiction, where the desire for something is in fact a desire for something that's harmful. Now, it's hard to argue really that all attachments are harmful if attachment is desireful, for it's the case that to want to do something is necessary to actually do it, to create, and that would be a desire, so that if we had no desires, well, there would be nothing created. It doesn't sound as though that would bring any perfect physical state. I mean, on the contrary, we might just starve to death because there's no desire to go and eat and look for food and find it, and so on and so forth. So an extreme case of non-attachment in that sort of understanding of attachment, non-emotive, simply wanting to do something or to have something. If we don't have that, we don't have life at all. And more normally speaking, we consider life to be something that we value and is essential to all else that we value, living, in fact. The whole discourse on attachment is, I think, a byroad, and one that seems attractive where you have a situation of not holding to a belief in God, and especially a personal God that cares for you and is, for argument's sake, at least extremely able, powerful to bring about what he wishes for your blessing and goodness. So I'm saying that if you have this sort of view of God, then something like the pursuit of non-attachment seems a bit empty and unnecessarily confusing. I would actually come from quite the other direction, saying that love is an overwhelming attachment, a great desire for the happiness and well-being and good outcome, if you like, whatever that is, for the person loved. And that to love is a tremendous blessing to the person loving. And yes, you could say, well, there'd be a tremendous loss then if the person loses their beloved. If they lose their love of God. And in a more everyday experience for both the religious and the secular, if they lose their partner that they love and so on, or their children, or their family, or their friends. And the sort of secular type spiritual philosophy says, yes, well, therefore, you see, you're at risk if you are attached to. Attachment brings unhappiness, and the answer is no, it's the breaking of attachment, the loss of being attached to someone that you love and care for, that would be the unhappiness. And that a faith that loves another person or loves God is a tremendous happiness of attachment. And hence there is the principle of being faithful and true to that which we love and value as a very important condition, in fact, cardinal condition of spiritual living, to have an integrity that holds firm and holds on to this wonderful state of desiring to bring all blessing to the one loved, whether it's God or man or any form of life. Well, especially life in that sense. Perhaps not objects. The car, the house, and so on. We value life in particular in this way. To love at least some life seems to be of cardinal importance to your happiness, and therefore integrity and faithfulness. To hold faithful and true to such is the way, is enlightenment. So in conclusion, I'm taking the view that the notion of attachment is confusing and redundant when it comes to what we really value. I'm just taken in religious discourses that we value eternal life and wholesome, good, enjoyable, blessed life, but that, of course, not wretched torment. Endless. We're certainly not attached to that, but we are attached to a desire for blessing and fullness of life, and that might include such things as assurance and integrity and creativity and contrast and change and ever-expanding joy, etc. The valuing of such and the conception of such bypasses the need to struggle over what we might mean by attachment or non-attachment and whether such in itself is a blessing. It's a byroad in the sense that if we focus and concentrate on such issues, we are crowding out issues that are a true blessing. I don't mean I'm proving such here in discourse that they're such a blessing. It's the practice of such that demonstrates such to you or not. So it's a case of taste and see that the Lord is good, that the belief in God, a loving God, all-powerful God, one that loves you, is a tremendous blessing when you practice it. And it doesn't mean much when you don't. Well, I've said that preoccupation with something like non-attachment is one of several major features. Another that I would cite is the notion that we should live in the present. This is particularly emphasized in a Buddhist view, philosophy, that recognizes that much of our unhappiness is, apart from physical pain in the present, much of our unhappiness is regret about things in the past and fear and concern about possible bad things in the future. So if we control the mind such that we do not preoccupy ourselves with such, we save a lot of unhappiness. Not all. There are some unhappinesses like pain, hunger, and injury that can be very much in the present a problem. Unless we define the present as so narrowly a moment, a speck in time, that, well, if we're able to reduce the stuff that's before, the past, and the stuff that's in the future, then yes, we would have minimized suffering. But needless to say, it takes a Herculean control of mind to do so, and can be extremely damaging to the welfare of the next moment that we come to. You know, if I really totally ignore the fact that I'm starving to death at the minute, it's of no account to me, because most of the concern is for the future. And the actual problem of starving at this instant in time, well, if the instant in time is so small, I haven't got time to really think about it. But the consequence is then something like death, because I don't bother to have a preoccupation, concern for the future, and go and find some food, or attempt to. It doesn't sound like a recipe for eternal life. I mean, there's something extremely peculiar being considered in such an analysis, not something that actually seems attractive and something we want to that we would value, though can be sort of conceived of in some sense. In other words, a total existence of the now is not life. It's such a small moment of time, whereas life is something to do with an ongoing time, a length of time that has past, present, and future. And indeed, time seems to be of the essence, one of the essences at least, of this experience of living in the creation, the universe as we find it. In other words, quite simply, the pursuit of non-suffering is not ultimately a spiritual goal, but a misunderstanding of the role of suffering, which is to guide us into fullness of life, life eternal. So I find that from this sort of analysis, the understanding of the secular path to spirituality is thought with an unreasonableness from what we have found life to be in our everyday non-spiritual experience. Should I say our everyday experience of the spiritual, the religious, and the non-spiritual, and the non-religious? Short, I think that the non-theological approach to spirituality is dead in the water before you start. That the assumption of God, to assume that God exists, rather than to assume that God does not exist, is the key to happiness in the longer run. One can only say that for you to be convinced of which is the right answer is to live it, is to taste and see. Which do you find to be satisfactory? Trusting in God or not trusting in God? And from that experience, you will know the way you wish to go. And of course, I would argue that that is the very reason for us being in this universe, to taste and see. For we are presented with good and bad, good and evil, if you like, and the teaching of such experience and so on guides us in the way to go. Bless you. And you are blessed simply by being here, alive. And in this experience of being alive, we come to value that which supports life. And that's the true spiritual path, the path to life abundant, life eternal, where life is found to be change amidst integrity, assurance, hope, peace, blessedness, joy, loving kindness, an astonishing well-being, everlasting. That in some sense that's what we characterize the notion of life to be and pursue, and we're extremely attached to it. We're a living soul. What would a man give in exchange for his soul? That's in the Jesus story, Jesus saying, bless you. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. I think I should add, though, that my way of living, for instance, I don't, in large measure, pray for things. Because, of course, I'm taking the view God's already loving me and I trust Him. But I do have an attachment to Him loving me. My goodness, I wouldn't let that go. You see what I mean? So I'm not saying I'm not attached to that which is good. I'm just saying that I'm not unreasonably attached to wanting things that I think there's a possibility that God may know is not best for me. So I'm not hunger and thirsting after things that, if you like, seem to be against God's will at the minute, and I need to come about. Now, don't get me wrong, if I'm suffering from great pain or I'm worried about someone, I may well fall into, what am I supposed to do here, Lord? Show me. And I'm wanting. I'm attached very much to putting it right. Or Him revealing to me just how it is right, the way it is, of course. So, I do agree with non-attachment to worldly things that would get in the way of my love of God and His love of me. I mean, in a sense, nothing can, because He's an all-powerful God. But I'm believing in non-attachment to certain class of things that, if you like, are revealed in the fullness of time, not to be according to His wonderful purpose and love and kindness. I certainly don't want to be attached to things that would obstruct God's will. Do you see? So, yes, if you mean that sort of non-attachment to worldly things that don't satisfy, but not to be attached to, most people need to eat each day and need to breathe in order to continue living. I mean, you may say all people, there might be some astonishing exceptions, avatars and so on, but the bulk of us need to be attached to things that bring welfare, generally. And it's wise not just to be attached to things that bring your own welfare, because we're part of a society, and that we need a society, and their welfare is our welfare. Even from a self-interest point of view. But you may have transcended this already and simply want the welfare of other life for its own sake. Because that life itself wants life and prosperity and happiness and so on. And this may quicken in you a great caring. How lovely. And I'd like you to be wonderfully attached to such caring view, of course. Wouldn't like you to give that up. Oh, that would be so sad. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.